Welcome to Mocktails and Masterpieces with the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra. Today's episode is sponsored by Anthony Team Realty.
Greetings, ICO friends. The holidays are upon us, and you know what that means. It's time for the Indianapolis Chamber Orchestra's classical Christmas program. It's been an annual tradition for the ICO for decades. And we're delighted to welcome to our Mocktails and Masterpieces two of our soloists of the quartet, soprano Mary Martin and tenor Norman Shankle are with us. Greetings to both of you.
Hello. Good to be here.
Hi. Happy to be here.
Norman, you were with us last December for our performance of Messiah. And Mary, you were slated to be there as well. Regrettably, had to withdraw at the last minute due to illness. We are delighted that you're going to be with us. I wonder if you could take just a moment, Mary, and introduce yourself.
Sure. Hello. My name is Mary Martin. I am a soprano. I teach at DePauw University. Happy to be a Tiger. And I'm finishing up doctoral work at Indiana University. I have lived in Indiana for about 6 or so years. I love it here. I am originally from Michigan, so my Midwestern roots run deep. And it's a pleasure to be joining ICO.
Wonderful, Mary. And Norman, you were with us, as I referenced last year. Beautiful, beautiful contribution to our Messiah program. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Norman Shankle, tenor. I live on the East Coast, and I think I've always lived on the East Coast. I did live a short while overseas. Not a short while, actually. Let's see. That's me. I'm a tenor. You know, I will say one thing, and I've got the shirt on coincidentally. This wasn't planned, but you can see I have a National Gallery shirt on today because I joined the music department in maybe last February.
Oh,
yeah. So I do love that. Actually, it's in DC, which means I have to commute, which is not super great, but I do like doing it.
We're accustomed to that as performers. Certainly, if you're not on an airplane, you're in a car. It certainly seems.
Right.
Well, welcome to both of you. This is again a staple in ICO repertoire, but really for choruses, for orchestras around the country, around the world. Messiah has been in the repertoire since the moment it was penned. And, we come up to this time of year, and for performers, it's always, where's your Nutcracker? Or where's your Messiah? A mall, for example. There are certain things that have stayed in the repertoire, and for good reason. But I'm curious, Mary, we'll start with you. What do you think it is about Messiah in particular for performers, for singers such as yourself, but also for audiences that, continue to bring us back to it every year, either at December or during Lent? Interesting.
Sure. Well, I always call Messiah chicken soup for the musical soul. Like, I know that's super cheesy, but I'm a cheesy person. It's comfort food. It's something known. It's always a little bit different every time because the voice is different and orchestras are different. They're living, breathing things just like anything else. And the text always has something that speaks to you. And that can, like, for me, it's always, I love He Shall Feed His Flock. I love that movement specifically always like really comforts me in a way that not a lot of oratorio brings me comfort in. And that it's different for everybody, but sometimes other text just hits differently depending on what you're going through, what curveball the holidays have thrown for you this year, which it's different every year. So in that sense of it really is very comforting and joyful, and it's community building. It's we all gather and can expect a delightful afternoon or evening. And then musically, it's always been around. I went to a private high school that was all women, and we sang an SSA arrangement of the Hallelujah Chorus at every single high school choir concert around Christmas time. So it's been that part. And then even in conducting classes back in college a million years ago, we had to learn how to conduct recit and conduct like cueing choruses with "And the Glory of the Lord" and all of the recits in the Messiah. So it's always been around me in a musical way and in a life way.
And Norman, when your calendar starts to fill in around the holidays with Messiahs, every year, is this something that you look forward to coming back to and revisiting?
It really is, actually. I really liked Mary the chicken soup analogy, and yeah, it's a good point. There has been, I think, I mean, maybe since high school. Probably 1 year I didn't do Messiah, and it was during COVID. And I remember sitting around and thinking how strange it was to not be singing it and to not hear it. That was really weird. But I do like that kind of, it's like a weird communal experience where everyone really knows it, especially the musicians, but also has their own kind of ideas about things, and putting it together is it's different every time. It seems like it shouldn't be because it's Messiah and everyone's done it 100 times, but it's different every time. And that part, to be able to do that and be a part of it, that kind of difference every single time, it's really special actually to me, actually familiar and different at the same time.
I love that point, Norman. And so I want to stay with that. The idea that we know this piece like the back of our hand because, we performed it, for many of us decades now. The score, my score is all marked in. I've used the same one for ages. But it is different every time. And there are performance traditions, which I'd love to talk about in both of your experiences. But Norman, I'll stay with you. The idea that, you can do this with amateur choruses. It's done all the time with amateur choruses, right, with very large orchestras, right, very small chamber-sized orchestras that use maybe perhaps a performance-inspired tradition, or downright Baroque orchestras where everything's detuned, played on gut strings, and right, tempos are faster, tempos are slower. What has been your experience, performing with different ensembles?
I mean, I've done it with the big gigantic orchestras and big gigantic choruses. I've done it, tuned down the half step, which surprisingly, this is a tenor secret. The tuned down half step seems like, a fantastic idea most of the time. And then later on in the piece, you realize how low the rest of it is. And then you're like, whoops, maybe I didn't want to do this a half step lower. It's the half step lower, actually. You know what? Both of them make the piece so different, actually. With a super large chorus and a super large orchestra, there's things you can't do that you can do with kind of a smaller, more agile orchestra. And a down a half step changes. I think the things you put in it as a soloist, I'm going to say, the things you try to put into the music, for me, if I'm doing it a half step lower, maybe I don't have that same color. I can't make that same color in this range. It's very strange. Very strange. And I find that, the times when I have to do them both kind of at the same time, I do have to kind of get myself in a mindset of, this is going to be a half step lower now, or this is going to be with 140 people in the chorus, or 100 people in the orchestra now, and so there's no super soft singing there because you're going to be heard. But all enjoyable, and like the challenge and the fact that challenge when you're meeting challenges when the music and it's very familiar, then it's fun as opposed to work.
And Mary, any preference in your mind as to, do you want a 100-piece orchestra backing you up? Mozart did an arrangement of Messiah that added woodwinds and more brass. So, it just seems like we're always kind of tinkering with this piece, which we know so well.
Sure. I mean, I actually have never done it tuned down a half step. I've never done the Mozart arrangement. I've always done the sort of, I don't want to say vanilla because that implies boring, and it's not. I've sort of the traditional Messiah. And I was thinking while you were speaking, Norman, about how it would feel to sing it down a half step. I think it would throw me completely off. Like, I'm not interested. I'm good where I'm at. I mean, it'd be a fun challenge. And as far as on orchestra size, that's just sort of the beauty of this era of oratorio specifically. You can't really do a Verdi Requiem with a chamber group. Like, it would be, I mean, you could probably, but it would hit a lot different. Whereas the Messiah with a lighter group is just a different shade of the same color as it would be in with a larger ensemble, larger orchestra, larger chorus, and larger forces in general. But I do agree that, it might be easier to do florid ornaments with a smaller group because it's you can stay together with them more easily. There's fewer, it feels more like you're part of the same circle rather than sort of spread out more.
Right.
But it's fun either way. I don't have as much to say though about the tuning. That I can't even think about that.
You should try the tuning once. It's a really an eye opener because you suddenly realize how much different you have to approach things when you're not
Right.
concerned about singing high. Kind of, it's weird.
I've done it with other pieces, but not with the Messiah.
Right.
But with the other pieces, it felt like you were in one of those fun houses where you couldn't tell
Yes,
like where the
right. Yes. Did I finish it? Did I do it? Yeah.
Right.
Since
Is
this
it
is
right?
a
I don't know.
since this is a piece that we again have lived with for a very long time, there are certainly anecdotes or stories or comical things, whatever the case may be, that you might both have with this. Two things spring to my mind, and one of them was really very, very unfortunate. We were coming back right after COVID. I believe this is 2021. And we had our chorus. We went through all the processes that everybody had to, the tests and everything, and then we find out, the day before that one of our chorus members was positive, and then we had to, take the chorus out of it altogether. We were scrambling. We ended up putting on what I thought was a really solid performance with just our solo quartet, did just the arias for the Bach Christmas Oratorio and Handel. So yes, the performance was salvaged. But the other horror story that I have was my very first Messiah. This was back in mid 2000s, and one soloist that I was working with probably smelled the green all over me. Just knew that I really wasn't very familiar with the work as a whole, and started adding ornamentation like I had never heard before. I didn't know where the cadence was. I didn't know how to come out of it. And I'm sure the orchestra could see me sweating. It all ended up fine, but that was one of my first, that didn't happen in rehearsal. All of a sudden it happens in the concert, and I don't know what to do.
Yeah,
so that's something that will forever live with me. But we'll start with you, Mary. Do you have a recollection of a performance or something, that stands out amongst all the others, either positive or not?
Sure. Well, two things come to mind. I subbed in last minute for a friend of mine who fell ill because, again, when you do Messiahs around December, it's just asking, like it's a tightrope, right? But she fell ill, so I subbed in, and it was in Battle Creek, which is of course the home of Kellogg's cereal, and I was very excited. And I took I found a box of Rice Krispie treat cereal that matched my gown, and that is one of my most cherished performance pictures. It was delicious, but a great meal after a Messiah. Just have slam some cereal down. But an earlier Messiah, I learned a very valuable lesson, which is if you are going to do a Messiah or really any performance where you're standing a lot in one place, you better make sure that those shoes fit comfortably, because as we were going, my toes just got tighter and tighter, and I almost passed out because my feet were hurting so badly, and it took me out completely. I couldn't think about the beautiful text, the orchestra, the audience, but I was just stay in it, don't, because my feet were killing me. So now I'm I don't care how cute they are, I just wear a long gown so hopefully no one can see them, and I get as close to a tennis shoe as I possibly can.
That's funny. Norman, how about you?
It's funny because I have a shoe story also. It's not me though. It's this was years ago, and a bass that I knew was singing it together, and we get to the performance, and it was one of those things where we rehearsed before, and the performance was that evening, and so we were kind of had a variety of things to wear. Yeah, and come the performance time, he doesn't have his dress shoes, and he sang the Messiah in his black socks, which I teased him about for years because he's sitting in the front of the stage in a pair of socks, and I'm sure the people in the front row, were looking and wondering why he didn't have shoes on. No one else probably knew, but we knew, and so I laughed and teased him all the time actually about that.
Oh, that is funny. Wow. So as referenced many times here, the Messiah is a good friend for all of us, certainly for the ICO. And a few years ago, we decided to change things a little bit. Instead of performing the entirety of Messiah, we performed just the Christmas portion, part one. And then the first half of our concert then is a different work every year. And this year we visit Camille Saint-Saens' Christmas Oratorio, an earlier work of his, which is really new to the three of us. I performed it as a violinist years ago. I've never conducted it, but have studied it and familiar with it. But what are your impressions of this French, middle 19th century French Christmas cantata? Mary.
I love it. It has such a that like beautiful, like clean Christmas feeling. If you ever Google French music, or I guess look it up on Spotify, French music, even pop French Christmas music, it all sounds like cool tones, but still like comforting. It's funny because the Christmas Oratorio definitely sounds like that as well. And we were speaking about this earlier, but he actually has a very vast repertoire of music. I'm used to hearing it in a church setting or organ music, but he also wrote a lot. He wrote an opera, maybe more. I should probably know, but he certainly wrote opera, and he also wrote lots of art song. But we don't we know his name. His name is in our world, but we don't have specific works that we can rapid fire out. So I'm really excited to work on this.
And Norman, new work for you as well.
Yeah, very new. And I agree. You know, I remember pulling it out and listening to it a few months ago, and I like the. I mean, it's so different from Messiah, and to me, it's almost kind of it seems older than it is actually at times, and then in other times it seems kind of quite modern. I like it. I like the kind of pastoral feel of that beginning, that kind of the kind of chanty things that it starts off with. It seems very like seems like a traditional Christmas piece that we've always been doing, and we haven't always been doing it.
I agree with that sentiment completely. You know, as a study of Gounod and Bach, you know, this was almost kind of an exercise for him, but it comes off extremely musical. You know, that pastoral quality we're talking about, the strings alone, along with a very prominent organ part. I think it's a beautiful work. I refer to it as a cantata because it's not a long work at all, but to call it an oratorio would be a bit of an exaggeration, even that's what his title is. And so I think that this is a wonderful example of what the ICO has tried to do through its programming, which is present the masterworks, the tried and true, but also to introduce works that are either brand new or really underperformed in the repertoire. So that's Camille Saint-Saens' Christmas Oratorio, part one of Handel's Messiah, on December 8th at 7:30, Landmarks Theater. But we're also bringing back the sing-along, Messiah sing-along, which has been absent from our programming the past 3 years. As I understand it, ticket sales are incredibly strong. And so we hope that you do join us for either the performance. If you prefer to sing, definitely want to come to the second performance where you can sing along with our soloists and chorus. But I want to thank you, Mary and Norman, for joining us for this Mocktails and Masterpieces. We look forward to being on stage with you very, very soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.